This story was hidden for over a century, locked away in secret archives, whispered only among the initiated, feared by those who dared to glimpse its truth. Few people know that long before Edgar Cayce ever spoke of evil souls and their afterlife journey, Helena Petrovna Blavatsky had already received these same revelations through the Mahatmas, the ascended masters, who guided her hand as she wrote the secret doctrine. In 1888, while the world celebrated scientific progress and rational thought, Blavatsky was channeling knowledge about the darkest corners of human existence. Knowledge that would make even the bravest souls tremble. She saw what happens to the spirits of murderers, dictators, and monsters like Hitler when they cross the veil of death. What she discovered wasn't hell as religions taught it. It was something far more complex, more terrifying, and yet more hopeful than anyone could imagine. But this knowledge came with a price. Those who possessed it would forever see the world differently, understanding that evil wasn't just punished, it was transformed through methods that would challenge everything you believe about justice, mercy, and the nature of the soul itself. Helena Blavatsky was no ordinary woman. Born in Russia in 1831, she carried within her soul the memory of ancient lifetimes spent in the mystery schools of Egypt, the temples of Atlantis, the sacred caves of Tibet. From childhood, she felt the weight of knowledge pressing against her consciousness like a dam ready to burst. Why do some souls choose darkness? This question haunted her dreams, whispered to her in moments of deep meditation. She would sit for hours, her consciousness drifting between dimensions, seeking answers that conventional religion couldn't provide. "I remember the night everything changed for me," she would later write in her private journals. "The masters appeared, not as glowing beings of light, but as teachers whose eyes held the accumulated wisdom of countless civilizations. They showed me the great wheel of karma, the endless cycle where every action creates its consequence, where every soul, no matter how fallen, must eventually face the mirror of its deeds." The weight of this revelation nearly broke her. To know that Hitler's soul still existed somewhere, that the spirits of all history's monsters were not simply erased, but continued their journey through dimensions of experience. It was almost too much to bear. Her hands trembled as she wrote, feeling the presence of these masters guiding her pen. They were preparing her for a revelation that would shake the very foundations of human understanding about good, evil, and the price of redemption. But before we continue deeper into this mystery, let me ask you something. From which city in the world are you listening to me right now? Comment below. This is more important than you imagine, because the place where you hear this truth might not be a coincidence. What Blavatsky was about to discover would change everything she thought she knew about the afterlife. Through the guidance of Master Kuthumi and Master Moria, Blavatsky began to understand the architecture of existence beyond death. The universe, they revealed, was not divided into simple heaven and hell, but into 7 distinct planes of consciousness, each one a realm where souls experience the consequences of their earthly choices. In her trance states, she found herself traveling these planes, witnessing firsthand what happens to those who have chosen the path of darkness. The first revelation came like a lightning bolt to her consciousness. Evil souls don't simply disappear into punishment. They enter a state of reflection so complete, so absolute, that they experience every moment of pain they cause to others. "Saw a soul," she wrote in her secret notebooks, "the soul of a man who had been a tyrant in life. He stood before what the masters called the mirror of karma, not a physical mirror, but a dimensional space where the soul experiences reality, from every perspective except its own. This soul was forced to feel the fear of every person he had terrorized, the grief of every mother whose child he had taken, the despair of every innocent life he had destroyed. But this wasn't punishment in the traditional sense. It was education. The soul was learning through direct experience the true weight of its actions. The masters explained to Blavatsky that some souls, particularly those who had wielded great power for evil, became trapped in what they called the gray zones, dimensional spaces between the planes where consciousness becomes stuck, unable to move forward, unable to accept the truth of what it has done. These are not places of fire and brimstone, Master Kuthumi communicated telepathically. They are realms of isolation, where the soul experiences the ultimate consequence of separation from divine love, complete and utter loneliness. But here's where Blavatsky's revelation becomes truly shocking. The masters showed her that even in these gray zones, even in the deepest pits of karmic consequence, there was always a way out, always a path back to the light. The question was, how long would it take, and what price would the soul be willing to pay for its redemption? What she learned next would challenge every assumption about justice and mercy. As Blavatsky's consciousness expanded under the master's guidance, she began to access memories from humanity's distant past, memories encoded in what the theosophical teachings call the Akashic records. Here she discovered that the question of evil souls and their fate wasn't new to human history. In the final days of Atlantis, she saw there lived souls who would later incarnate as history's greatest monsters. These were beings who had advanced spiritual knowledge but chose to use it for domination and control. They were the priest kings who corrupted the crystal technologies, who turned healing into warfare, who ultimately caused the destruction of their own civilization. I watched as these souls, Blavatsky recorded, drunk on power and devoid of compassion, made choices that would echo through thousands of years. When Atlantis fell beneath the waves, these souls didn't die. They scattered across time, carrying with them the seeds of future darkness. The masters revealed that Hitler himself was one of these Atlantean souls, a being who had once been a high priest in the temples of the fallen continent. His obsession with ancient symbols, his belief in a master race, his attraction to occult knowledge, all of these were distorted echoes of Atlantean memories surfacing in his consciousness. But here's what makes this revelation even more profound. Blavatsky learned that she herself had been present in those final days of Atlantis, but as one of the guardians who tried to prevent the catastrophe. She had incarnated again and again, lifetime after lifetime, specifically to help these fallen souls find their way back to the light. "We are all connected," she wrote, "victim and perpetrator, light and shadow. The souls who choose evil in one lifetime may have been saints in another. The wheel of karma turns, and we all play every role." This understanding led to an even more startling revelation. The masters showed her that in every age, when humanity faces its darkest hour, certain souls incarnate specifically to serve as bridges, to help the lost ones remember who they truly are beneath the accumulated pain and darkness. These bridge souls often don't even realize their mission. They simply feel an inexplicable calling to pray for those who seem beyond redemption, to send love where others send hatred, to hold space for transformation even when it seems impossible. And sometimes, Blavatsky learned, they succeed in ways that defy all human understanding. Through deeper communion with the Mahatmas, Blavatsky was shown the actual mechanics of how evil souls experience their post-death existence. What she discovered was more complex and terrifying than any religious description of hell. When a soul heavily burdened with evil karma dies, she learned, it doesn't immediately face judgment. Instead, it enters what the masters called the reflection realm, a dimension where the soul's own consciousness creates its reality based on its deepest beliefs about itself. "I witnessed a soul," she recorded, "the essence of what had been a cruel dictator. In life, he believed he was superior to others, that their suffering was meaningless. In death, his consciousness created a reality where he was completely alone, not as punishment, but as the natural consequence of his lifetime of emotional isolation from others. But the masters revealed something even more disturbing. Some souls, particularly those who had committed acts of extreme evil, become so identified with their dark actions that they cannot conceive of existence any other way. These souls, Blavatsky saw, actively resist any attempt at redemption. In the reflection realm, these resistant souls experience what she described as karmic loops, endless repetitions of the pain they caused, but from every perspective except their own. A soul who had been a torturer would experience being tortured not once but thousands of times, feeling every nuance of fear and helplessness they had inflicted. Yet even this isn't permanent. The masters explained that the universe operates on the principle of eventual return. Every soul, no matter how fallen, carries within it the original divine spark. The question isn't whether redemption is possible, but how many eons of experience it will take for the soul to remember its true nature. Some souls, Master Moria communicated to Blavatsky, resist for so long that they begin to forget they are souls at all. They become like fragments of consciousness, driven purely by the momentum of their past actions. These fragments can attach to living beings, influencing them toward darkness. This revelation explained something that had puzzled mystics for centuries: how evil seemed to spread like a contagion, how good people could suddenly turn cruel, how darkness could possess not just individuals, but entire societies. But the Masters also revealed the antidote to this infection of consciousness. As Blavatsky's understanding deepened, the Masters revealed why she and others like her had incarnated during this particular period of human history. Earth was approaching what they called a karmic convergence, a time when many of the souls who had chosen darkness in previous ages would be given the opportunity for accelerated redemption. "You have come," Master Kuthumi explained, "not to judge these souls, but to serve as anchors of light in the dimensional spaces where they wander. Your consciousness, properly attuned, can create bridges across the void that separates them from divine love." Blavatsky began to understand that prayer wasn't just a religious practice, it was a technology of consciousness that could literally reach across dimensions to touch lost souls. But not prayer, as most people understood it. This was what the Masters called compassionate witnessing, holding space for the possibility of redemption without trying to force or judge. Through her enhanced perception, she could sense these lost souls all around the physical world, drawn to places of power, to sensitive individuals, to situations where strong emotions created openings between dimensions. Some were genuinely seeking help, while others were still spreading their darkness like a spiritual virus. "I learned to distinguish between them," she wrote. "Those seeking redemption approached with a kind of desperate humility, while those still committed to darkness came with seductive whispers of power and superiority." The Masters taught her specific techniques for protecting herself while still remaining open to those souls ready for healing. She learned to surround herself with what they called discriminating compassion, love that was strong enough to transform darkness, but wise enough not to be consumed by it. But perhaps most importantly, she learned that these lost souls often incarnated again quickly, drawn back to earth by their unresolved karma. They might be born as children who displayed disturbing behavior, or as adults who seemed to carry an inexplicable burden of rage or cruelty. Recognition is the first step in helping them, the Masters taught. When you can see the ancient pain beneath the surface anger, when you can sense the trapped soul crying out from behind the mask of evil, then you become capable of offering the kind of love that can break karmic chains forged over lifetimes. And this is where Blavatsky's most dangerous discovery began to unfold. Through years of deep communion with the Ascended Masters, Blavatsky uncovered a disturbing truth about how some evil souls approach reincarnation, rather than accepting the natural karmic process of learning through consequence. Some souls actively manipulate their rebirth circumstances to continue their patterns of darkness. "I was shown," she wrote in her most secret journals, souls who had learned to maintain their ego consciousness between lifetimes, refusing to surrender to the cleansing process that normally occurs between incarnations. These souls can actually choose their birth circumstances in ways that serve their continued agenda of power and control. The Masters revealed that Hitler was one such soul, a being who had consciously chosen his birth time, location, and even his parents to maximize his potential for wielding dark influence. His obsession with astrology and timing wasn't just personal interest. It was the expression of a soul who understood the spiritual mechanics of incarnation and had learned to game the system. But here's what made this revelation truly terrifying. These souls didn't incarnate alone. They came in groups, seeking each other out across lifetimes, creating what the Masters called karmic cabals, networks of darkly aligned souls who would find each other and work together to accumulate power and spread suffering. Throughout history, Master Moria explained to Blavatsky, you can trace these soul groups. They incarnate together as tyrants and their inner circles, as corrupt leaders and their enablers, as the architects of humanity's darkest chapters. Yet, even more disturbing was the revelation that these souls had learned to identify and target light-bearing souls, those who incarnated specifically to serve and heal. They would systematically work to corrupt or destroy these light-bearers, understanding that removing sources of hope and love from the world made their own dark agenda easier to achieve. Blavatsky herself had been targeted multiple times throughout her life by what she came to recognize as these incarnated dark souls. The constant attacks on her character, the attempts to discredit her work, the mysterious illnesses that seemed to strike whenever she was making the most progress, all of this was the result of a coordinated effort by souls who recognized her as a threat to their continued dominance. But the Masters also revealed the ultimate weakness in this dark strategy. As Blavatsky's psychic abilities reached their peak, she was granted what the Masters called the ultimate vision, a glimpse into the endgame of karmic evolution, the moment when even the darkest souls must finally face their ultimate choice. In this vision, she saw that no soul can resist the pull of divine love forever. Eventually, the accumulated weight of their own actions creates such suffering that even the most hardened consciousness begins to crack. At this moment of ultimate despair, when the soul has exhausted every avenue of resistance, a choice point emerges. "I watched," she recorded, "as the soul that had been Hitler faced this moment. He stood in a realm of absolute darkness, surrounded by the psychic debris of all the pain he had caused. For the first time in eons, he felt the full weight of what he had done, not as an observer, but as one who had personally experienced every moment of suffering he had inflicted." At this breaking point, the soul faced two possibilities: complete dissolution into the void, or surrender to the transformative power of divine love. The Masters explained that dissolution doesn't mean the soul ceases to exist. Rather, it means the ego structure that has been driving the evil behavior finally breaks apart, allowing the original divine essence to emerge. But, Master Koot, whom he warned, this process is so painful that many souls choose to postpone it further, incarnating again and again in circumstances of increasing difficulty, hoping to find some other way to resolve their karma. Blavatsky witnessed souls who had been trapped in this cycle for thousands of years, each lifetime bringing them closer to their inevitable moment of choice. Some became serial killers, driven by internal torment they couldn't understand. Others became dictators, desperately trying to regain the sense of power that once masked their inner emptiness. But she also saw the souls who finally surrendered. The transformation was so complete, so profound, that they emerged as some of the most compassionate beings imaginable, carrying within their consciousness the full understanding of what darkness means, and therefore capable of unprecedented love. "These redeemed souls," she wrote, "become the most powerful healers, because they know intimately every trick of the ego, every seduction of power, every justification for cruelty. They can reach other lost souls in ways that naturally light-filled beings cannot." And then Blavatsky received her final, most shocking revelation. In the climactic vision granted to her by the Mahatmas, Blavatsky witnessed what she called the Great Redemption, a cosmic event that would eventually encompass every soul that had ever chosen darkness, including those humanity considers irredeemably evil. She saw that the entire universe operates according to what the Masters called the law of eventual return, a principle stating that every fragment of consciousness that has separated itself from divine love must eventually be reclaimed, not through force or punishment, but through the irresistible pull of love itself. "I watched," she wrote in awe, "as souls I had seen trapped in darkness for millennia suddenly began to respond to something I had never noticed before, the constant, gentle calling of the divine that never stops reaching out to them, no matter how far they have fallen." The vision showed her that even Hitler's soul, despite all its accumulated darkness, still carried within it a spark of the original divine light. This spark could never be extinguished, no matter how deeply it was buried under layers of ego, cruelty, and separation. The entire cosmic process was designed to eventually wear away these layers until only the spark remained. But the most profound revelation was about the role of suffering in this process. The Masters showed her that the pain experienced by evil souls wasn't punishment, it was medicine. Each experience of consequence was precisely calibrated to help the soul understand what it had inflicted on others. The suffering was always exactly what was needed to crack the shell of ego and allow light to enter. "The universe," Master Moria communicated, "is not a courtroom where souls are judged and condemned. It is a hospital where all consciousness is gradually healed back to wholeness." Blavatsky saw that some souls who had committed the most heinous acts in one lifetime would, after their redemption, incarnate as great saints and healers, not to balance the scales of justice, but because their deep understanding of darkness made them uniquely qualified to help others who were struggling with similar shadows. She witnessed the soul that had been Hitler eventually emerging from its long journey through consequence and choosing, for the first time in eons, love over power. The transformation was so complete that this same consciousness would someday incarnate as a great teacher of compassion, carrying within its wisdom the hard-won knowledge of what separation from love truly costs. This vision revealed the ultimate truth. There are no irredeemable souls, only souls at different stages of their journey home to love. As we reach the end of this profound journey, through Helena Blavatsky's revelations about evil souls and their ultimate fate, a truth emerges that challenges everything our human minds want to believe about justice, punishment, and redemption. If you've listened to this entire story, it's not by accident. Your soul is ready to hear what the Mahatmas revealed to Blavatsky over a century ago, that even the darkest consciousness carries within it the seed of eventual redemption. Even Hitler, even the worst serial killer, even the most cruel dictator, whoever lived, this doesn't mean their actions are excused or that justice doesn't exist. Rather, it means that justice itself is so much vaster, so much more intelligent than human judgment, that it can transform even the deepest evil into the greatest good, not by bypassing consequence, but by using consequence as the medicine that heals the soul back to wholeness. You who are listening now, wherever you are in the world, are part of this great healing. Every time you choose love over hatred, every time you pray for those who seem beyond redemption, every time you refuse to give up hope for humanity, you become one of Blavatsky's light bearers, creating bridges across the darkness that can reach even the most lost souls. The masters taught her that no prayer is ever wasted, no act of compassion ever fails to make a difference. Somewhere in the vast dimensions of existence, the light you generate by simply choosing love reaches souls who have been wandering in darkness for lifetimes, showing them that the way home still exists. Perhaps the soul listening to these words right now was once something terrible in a previous lifetime. Perhaps you carry within your consciousness the guilt of ancient darkness you can't remember but somehow feel. If so, know this: your very capacity to feel remorse, your ability to be moved by the suffering of others, your desire to be better than you are, these are signs that your own journey back to light has already begun, and perhaps you are one of the bridge souls, incarnated specifically to help others cross the void between separation and love. If you feel drawn to pray for those who seem beyond hope, if you find yourself compelled to send love where others send hatred, if something in your heart refuses to believe that any soul is truly lost forever, then you are fulfilling the mission that brought you here. The promise Helena Blavatsky received from the Ascended Masters is the promise I leave with you now. Love always wins, light always returns, and no soul journeys alone forever. Even in the deepest darkness, even in the most seemingly hopeless cases, the seeds of redemption are always present, waiting for the right moment to bloom. If this message has touched something deep within your consciousness, if it has awakened a memory of who you truly are beneath all the fears and judgments, then share this light with others. For in the end, we are all part of the same consciousness, all connected in the vast web of existence that the Masters revealed to Blavatsky. The lost ones are calling out across the dimensions, seeking the light that can guide them home. And that light, dear soul, shines brightest through hearts like yours that refuse to give up on anyone, no matter how far they may have fallen. This is not just a story about evil souls and their redemption. This is the story of consciousness itself, journeying through every possible experience until it finally remembers its source in infinite love.